We're going to start off the show today diving into the American League side of the MLB playoff bracket as we got the final results in 2 series and we got a couple upsets as well, as you know, a lot of people do have their share of complaints about the playoff format at this point. At the same time, you have multiple chances to defend home field, and both the Astros and the Orioles were unable to do so, both of them getting swept by the lower seeded Tigers and Royals. So we're going to be diving into both of those series. We're going to start with Astros versus Tigers, where this is a situation, the big bad Astros, for the first time and I believe it is 9 seasons, will not be in the ALCS, and we're going to potentially see, a new face in the World Series picture. So as for this game, I understand under the playoff format and everything, maybe the Astros shouldn't have even been playing in this series. At the same time, the Astros won 88 games to the Tigers winning 86. You look at, it's really, I understand you end up having one of the better records in the conference, but that being said, I kind of stand by the idea that make these teams earn it, and the Astros did not this time around. They had sort of what felt like a golden opportunity to do so just based off of the pitching matchups. They got through Tarek Skubal. They end up losing that game, building up some momentum in the 9th inning, it felt like, offensively, and yet still kind of came out flat in this game. You have Hunter Brown against a bullpen day in Detroit, and your offense just does not show up for you in the series as a whole. It was the lone run in the 9th inning of Game 1. You end up getting 2 in this game to keep things more competitive. You take the lead in that 7th inning in a massive moment. You are going up against a rookie pitcher in Jackson Jobe to be able to do a little bit of damage there, and yet ultimately it was not enough. And you look at the situation as well where you come into the 8th inning now with a lead 2-1 over an inexperienced Tigers team on the road, backs against the wall, and if Tarek Skubal yesterday is talking about the amount of pressure that he was feeling in his start, how do you think a lot of these, other pitchers that aren't quite as established are feeling? And ultimately, it is the falling apart, really, of the experienced Astros bullpen members, talking about a Ryan Presley and a Josh Hader that ultimately goes awry. You just can't really blame the system for that, I don't think. It's about execution at the end of the day. And again, if you want to make the argument that they shouldn't have even been playing the games, I don't really know what to tell you in that situation. And the Orioles is probably more so the team in this situation. But I just feel like, I don't know, I'm for more baseball, and the Astros just kind of have to blame themselves. Again, lack of offensive execution. You have Yordan Alvarez really as one of the only players to show up for the Astros offense in this series, and he's playing on one knee. Now, Alex Bregman, of course, ended up having a pretty good 2 games as well. Yanier Diaz. So it's not like they were entirely absent, but this is a situation where I think you just have to tip your cap to the Tigers for what they were able to do. They were the ones who got in front of the Astros in each of these first 2 games. Parker Meadows ultimately had a very impactful series. He's the one who ends up hitting the go-ahead home run early in this game, able to sort of let the Tigers settle into this situation, even with the changes at bullpen and the fact that, they were basically throwing everything up against a wall and seeing what clicked for them. And they had a golden opportunities, the Astros did, to continue to pile on in that 7th inning when Jackson Jobe comes out of the bullpen. Was very surprising, at least in my opinion, to see him after having 4 MLB Major League innings pitched in his career, 3 of them coming against the Chicago White Sox, so that might as well have been against a minor league team, basically. And it was a very rough outing for him, and he obviously, that's one that he's going to want to put behind him, where he allows the bases to get loaded. But that being said, there was a massive moment there, bases loaded, no outs, Jose Altuve at the plate, and ultimately he hits a sac fly, so it wasn't an unproductive at-bat, but credit Jackson Jobe, because that could have gone so much worse than it actually did. And it was a pretty shallow sac fly as well, if it weren't for the fact that Vierling didn't exactly field it great. It was pretty shallow in foul territory, so he doesn't handle it quite as cleanly. Jeremy Pena, obviously one of the fastest players in baseball. He's able to tag up and get home there. But again, could have been a lot worse for the Tigers in that situation. Again, Jobe, definitely not one that he's going to be putting on his mantle, but facing Jose Altuve after all the damage that he has done throughout his postseason career, able to get out of that moment is absolutely massive for them. And it's the Tigers, this team that feels like, they might be a little bit of this Cinderella run. They start the postseason off strong. They now go on to face their division rivals in the Guardians next round, which will be very interesting to see there. Clearly, it's the year of the AL Central because we have 3 teams from that division. The one that was, deemed as the weakest in baseball, at least last season, for a lot of people, probably at least partially, including myself, coming into this year as well. And they have 3 of the 4 remaining American League playoff spots. So pretty impressive there. And the reason why it's 3 is because it was the Kansas City Royals additionally coming out on top in their game against the Baltimore Orioles. And this is, it just goes to show how incredible that pitching staff is, because that is an offense in Baltimore that is absolutely loaded, basically top to bottom in that lineup. Being able to come out, largely unscathed. You look at the Orioles team hitting stats in this game here, where they hit 167, just a 225 on base percentage. And again, the Orioles ultimately throughout this series really struggled with capitalizing on these opportunities. Now, they at least get on the board on Wednesday after being shut out on Tuesday. They put up 1, but it's just nowhere near enough. And I understand, like I mentioned, this is very much about the Kansas City Royals pitching staff and how incredible they have been. But for the Orioles, you look at the likes of a Gunnar Henderson who goes hitless. You look at the likes of a Ryan Mountcastle, also hitless in this series. And you just feel like there were a lot more opportunities to capitalize on that they just didn't. Now, credit the Royals, it's the pitching. The defense was also one of the biggest difference makers in this series, and it's not like the Orioles were, openly bad throughout this series. It's just that they really weren't able to sort of capitalize and take away plays like we saw the Royals being able to do. You have Bobby Witt Jr., who obviously he's the MVP of this series if there were one, considering the fact that he hits the game-winning RBI in each of these 2 games. You're talking about a 1-0 win and a 2-1 win, and it's just about your best player stepping up. Bobby Witt Jr. was able to do so offensively, defensively at shortstop as well. He just finds a way to, make an impact. You have MJ Melendez making jumping catches out there in left field, and I think that you look at a situation where it is Bobby Witt Jr., him being able to beat out a ball to beat out a ball to second base, or first base actually. And I just feel like this is a situation where, the Orioles, unfortunately for them, they're going to have these narratives around them about the lack of postseason success over these past 2 seasons. They are 0-5 this year. Again, situation where Orioles under old playoff formats wouldn't have even been playing, but it is what it is. You got to roll with the punches. You kind of were stumbling through the second half of the season to a point where the Orioles very easily could have had a bye, but they let it slip away from them, and ultimately they kind of pay the price here. And they're going to have a lot of interesting decisions coming up here. Corbin Burns, who of course was excellent for them in Game 1 and was the only reason really that game was even competitive, he's going to be a free agent. How are they going to go about this? Still a very young team, so I don't think it's any world of panic at this current moment. But that being said, there are going to be eyes on them now of can they actually get it done when it matters the most, which I think is a little bit of a tired narrative that, you're talking about a 2-3 day stretch basically. I know last year a little bit longer in that divisional series, but they talked about how last year, and it still is a little bit of a narrative of, some of these teams are hurt from the fact that there is a bye week in the first round for some of these teams. Well, the Orioles benefited from that last year, and then they still got swept by the Rangers. This year, they actually play in the first round, and they end up losing to the Royals, unable to win a game. So, again, you can make the argument any which way. I just feel like ultimately the situation is the situation. You have to capitalize on it, and Orioles unable to do so here. But again, year of the AL Central. So the Tigers and the Royals, they move on here. In the National League, we don't have full results because we did see the Milwaukee Brewers extend their series. First time in these past few seasons that we have seen a Game 3 in the wild card. So we are going to be talking about a resilient Brewers win, along with the fact that the Padres were able to sweep the Atlanta Braves. They now are locked into the NLDS, so we're going to be diving into both of those games for yesterday and the overall bigger picture there. But before we do so, we do have to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.